bigger and better every year, and really excited for the events that we have this month. So yeah, hope you enjoyed today's session and the rest of the month's activities as well.
Thanks, Matt. We've also got Sahara.
Hi everyone, I'm Zahara. I'm the EDI business partner here at Buckinghamshire Uni, and I'm really happy to be at this event. I've just started recording the session, Margaret, so that you know, so I'll send that through to you. But no, really looking forward to understanding more about this, what we're going to be talking about today. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sahara. We also have Kirstine Samuels, who's part of the steering group, and Christina Ebanks. Christina? May not be on the call. We also have Helen Ayo Ajay, who's part of our steering group, and Daniel Dubé, who is not here. And we also have Ama Louise, Mary Mosiane, Anise Thomas, Janet Cash, Beatrice, Jeffrey, Amoa Teng as well. So just to let everybody know, the REN steering group are the colleagues that come together and work behind the scenes to pull together all the events and all the different things that we do as part of REN. So thank you very much to the steering group for all of your hard work. I know that it's not always easy, but I do thank you for your contributions. So thank you for that. Okay, so I'm going to start off by just sharing a few slides, and in those slides what really I want to do is just to share with you what our themes are for Black History Month this year and what we'll be focusing our events on. So if you just bear with me, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. So this year, our theme is #WeMatter, and this is about recognizing our colleagues of color, Black women, and celebrating the input that women bring and what women do to inspire and empower. So a big part of some of the activities that you'll see that we're doing will be looking at how we celebrate women and their contribution, not only to our work in the university, but also to our work within our local communities as well. The other theme that we are celebrating this year is #TimeToDonate. And that's why we're very, very proud and pleased to have Yaser and Orin join us this morning, because they'll be talking more about this #TimeToDonate. A big part, all of us in the university, what I would encourage us to do is to take the time to go and donate your blood. This will save somebody's life. It's really an important contribution, and it's something that will make a big difference. And I'm not going to say too much more on that because Yaser and Orin are going to be talking about that. But also we want to celebrate our NHS. 75 years is not easy, but we've done it. And so it's an opportunity to celebrate that as well. So in looking at our events, what we have is a great selection. You'll see that we've got something on pretty much every day, every week, starting with today. We're also going to have these other events. Some of them are in person this year, which is really great because last year we couldn't really do a lot in person. So we're really pleased to be able to offer some in-person events. The key things I want you to, the links and everything to this will all be shared with you, and some of you would have already received the invitations. Simon is posting a link in the chat as well that you can log into if you haven't, but this just shows you the range of activities. I mean, all of these are really important, and we would encourage you to get involved. The In the Kitchen with Capera is a community initiative, so we'll be going out into the Capera kitchen to work with them. So if you're interested in volunteering for that, please do let me know, and that's something that I'm currently planning. We're also going to be having Jenny Mitchell, who'll be joining us at the later end of the month, so in early November. And Jenny Mitchell is a well-known poet, and she'll be coming to do a poetry workshop with us and also to tell us about her work. So we're hoping that for people to come, be a bit creative, do something different, and, you know, try and engage with Jenny. So on that note, I'm going to say stop sharing, and I'm going to hand over to Nick so that we can introduce our main speakers for today. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Margaret. And can I just say a few words of welcome to everybody this morning. Black History Month is hugely important for the university, because we are both a university that takes social justice very seriously. We're also an incredibly diverse community. We have one of the most diverse student bodies in the country, with very high proportions relatively of Black and Asian students. And our concentration on social justice is there really for all to see. The causes we care about, like, for example, the plight of Gypsy, Roma, traveller students, definitions of Islamophobia, and anti-Semitism, and all the work we do in our local and regional communities to try to work with civic partners to ensure that all the people in our communities that we touch, their lives are made better by the university. So really pleased to be here, delighted. Thank you very much for all the work, and delighted to see that work, to Margaret and all the other members of the Race Equality Network for bringing together such a fantastic programme for this month. But let me turn to our two speakers, because they're going to be talking about something which should matter to every single one of us, and yet it may not be something that we're all aware of. I remember when I first went to university a long time ago now, but one of the first things I actually was given was a donor card, making me aware of the whole issue of importance of donating organs or blood to help those who need them, should anything happen to me. But what we may not know, and I think our speakers will tell us a lot more about, is how that issue impacts ethnic minority communities much more so than it does white communities. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing from our speakers this morning and helping educate us all, but also perhaps giving us a kind of impetus to go out and do some work to try to address this issue. So welcome to Orin Lewis, and to Yaser Martini. And I'll just say a few words, if I may, about each, so you know who our speakers are. But we're really delighted to have you both here this morning. Thank you very much. And I know, Yaser, you know the university. Orin, I hope that this will be one of just many visits, virtual or real, to the university, and I hope that you will get to know the university well too. So Orin, if you don't know, is the co-founder and chief executive of the award-winning, and 44 times award-winning, UK charity, the Carribean Leukaemia Trust. And the charity is dedicated to raising the awareness of the shortage of Black and ethnic minority donors on the UK stem cell, blood and organ registers. And the charity works to recruit potential donors to come forward at registration drives and be involved in the process of offering hope and a healthy future to someone whose disorder may otherwise prove fatal. And Orin is also the co-chair of the National Black, Asian, Mixed Race and Minority Ethnic Transplant Alliance. I hope I've got that right, the NBTA, which is a coalition of organisations which seeks to promote positive and influential awareness of organ, blood and stem cell donation amongst ethnic and diverse background people. So Orin, spectacular work. Thank you for the work you're doing, and we're delighted you're here with us this morning. And Yaser, some of you may know Yaser, because Yaser has what I think must be kind of an unenviable task of trying to manage Jay Blades as our Chancellor. Because when I speak to Jay, he seems to have about 100 million things to do all at the same time. And poor Yaser has the task of trying to sort of manage all of that. But what you may not know about Yaser is that he actually leads a charity which was set up in memory of his daughter Margot, the Team Margot Foundation. And the mission of Team Margot is basically to help save and improve lives by educating people, inspiring and motivating them, especially from ethnically diverse communities, to register as blood, organ or stem cell or bone marrow donors, and also to provide support to families caring for child cancer patients. Team Margot Foundation also provides secretariat support to the all-party parliamentary group for ethnicity, transplantation and transfusion. So we're delighted you're here. We really very, very warmly support and admire the work you do with Team Margot, and of course the important work going on with the all-party parliamentary group, which we hope will be enormously influential in this area. So to both of you, a very, very warm welcome. And Margaret, I think I'm now turning over. Am I turning back to you, or am I going to Orin?
Thank
I'm
you,
going
Nick.
back to Margaret.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thank you for those introductions. So I'm now going to hand over to Yaser and then Orin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, and for this warm welcome. As Nick said, my name is Yaser Martini. I'm from Team Margot Foundation, which is the charity that's named in memory of my late daughter, Margot, and to honour her legacy. And I'm really pleased and grateful to have been asked to speak to you today alongside Orin at the start of Black History Month. So thank you very much again for inviting us to be here with you. Now, as Margaret has explained, as part of the themes for Black History Month, hashtag Time to Donate is one of them. And it's really centered around health, but more specifically around the positive steps that can be taken in respect of treatment options to combat ill health. At its core, it boils down to what each of us can and will do about it. If you like, our individual social responsibility to not only help ourselves or yourself, but also to help others. And it might sound a bit heavy for a Monday morning. But the fact is that cancer is indiscriminate, and it can affect any of us and at any time, regardless of who you are and where you come from. It could be you, could be someone dear to you, or a loved one. As I say, it's completely indiscriminate cancer, and it could happen to anyone at any time. Now, I'm a lucky guy. Good things, positive things tend to happen to me. And I just never thought it would happen to me or anyone close to me, until one day my false sense of security was shattered when Margot, my daughter, who was 14 months old at the time, in this picture here, she's 2 years, nearly 2 years old, just over 2 years old actually. And the only thing you can see that makes her look unwell is this nasogastric tube that's up her nose. So when she was diagnosed with blood cancer, initially our lives were completely turned upside down. And the relevance of me telling this story at the start of Black History Month starts to become apparent when you consider the health disparities that Nick touched on, which exist and which unfortunately are linked to who you are and where you come from. So what Team Margot Foundation does, and also what Orin does at ACLT, high level, is to focus on what we can collectively do to address these health disparities by improving the treatment options if you are unfortunate to need help. So I guess you could say in part we advocate for equity of access to what are transplant and transfusion treatments. And that in part relates to blood cancers and blood disorders, but also to organ transplantation, which can become necessary when a patient's organs has failed or has been damaged by disease or injury. So hopefully that gives you an overview. Thank you for your time and attention today. Remarkably, your actions and what you do next after this session is over might go on to help save someone's life. It's never ceased to amaze me that simply by me and Orin talking to you like this, it can remarkably result in someone's life or lives being saved, which is almost incredible. I don't have any slides. I'm happy to take questions at any time, really, but what I'm going to do over the next few minutes is in brief, give you a glimpse into Margot's story and the experience that we had, my own experience as a parent. It's all so intensely personal, and it will affect you variously in different ways. And then also to tell you about the work of Team Margot and what we're doing currently, which is different from what Orin does, sort of lower level. We operate differently, and there are things that you can do to help both ACLT and also Team Margot Foundation. So if I can start, about 9 months before this photograph was taken, Margot was diagnosed with blood cancer. She had a fairly rare situation because she had 2 blood cancers, and we felt some comfort in that we were being treated, or she was being treated, at Great Ormond Street Hospital. They see all the basket cases, and they'd seen 3 people like her in 10 years, and they said, look, the outcomes I'm afraid are not good. And so straight away she went in needing platelets because her platelet count was extremely low, and so they were afraid that without platelets she won't clot and they couldn't work on her. And then she needed blood. They suggested she have an exchange transfusion. I'd never heard of this before. An exchange transfusion is where they replace the patient's blood with the blood of a donor, because her blood was so riddled with leukemic blasts. And so initially these platelets arrived, and then the blood was ordered. And I said to the nurse at the time in intensive care, do you have enough blood? Do you have the right sort of platelets? And she said, we do, we've checked. In this instance, we do, but that's not always the case. And they duly arrived and they were administered. And I felt extremely grateful and relieved when they did. But almost immediately after that, I felt ashamed because I'd never given blood myself. And so suddenly now there's my 14-month-old daughter needing to be rescued. She was in a perilous condition. And without the platelets and the blood of donors, these anonymous people who are out there, 4% of society gives blood, the 96% of society relies upon the 4% to donate. For some reason, when we go to hospital and we need blood, we just assume it's going to be there. Where do we think it comes from? So I felt that hurt me deeply, and I felt deep shame and embarrassment for being in a situation where I was relying on the goodwill of fellow man and woman, and I'd never done this myself. And that's, frankly, that stayed with me and is one of my own personal motivations. Beyond that, Margot survived the initial situation, and we were told that later that morning, we're going to need to give Margot a bone marrow transplant. And I've never heard of one of those either. And if you think of it as though your immune system is in your bone marrow, and it's like a computer operating system, I always think. They need to remove the bone marrow, which is defaulty and functioning wrongly. And the bone marrow makes the blood, and they were making too many white cells, which is what leukemia is, and not enough of the other good stuff. And you replace it with the bone marrow of a donor, using their stem cells, which then populate. They hunker down inside the bones and then repopulate. And that's like a reboot to your health system, and it reboots the immune system. And that's what they were advocating. So, okay, doc, I'm a practical guy. What do we need to do to help Margot have a bone marrow transplant? And what transpires is that a matching process is required where you match tissue type. In this case, it isn't blood, it's tissue type. And you need, to get the same tissue type, you need people who have similar ethnicity. Now, by way of further introduction, I'm a quarter Scottish, a quarter Thai, Armenian, and Syrian. And that's just me. And so my wife is English and New Zealand. And so our kids are from all over the place, which gave Margot a rather unique mixed heritage. And so that was, frankly, the key difficulty with finding her perfect match, which is what tended to be referred to as a 10 out of 10 antigen match of tissue type, human leukocyte antigen. And that's really the gold standard. That's what you want if you are going to have a bone marrow transplant, because as far as we know, having a perfect match stands you in the best situation or in the best stead for a successful transplant. In the event, we were unable to find Margot a perfect matching donor. There was a 9 out of 10 donor, which sounds good. I think it's more complex than that. It's a dark art bone marrow matching. And it was frankly, they called it a suitable donor. It was frankly the only donor that we had, and we grabbed it with both hands very gratefully. A 21-year-old German man was stood up and donated. And he had bothered to join the stem cell register, which is what it's also called, to become a potential donor. You go on standby to be a lifesaver, they say. Thank heavens for him, because he also gave our daughter the second chance at life that we so desperately needed. At the time, Vicky and I and my wife had a decision to make. What do we do? Do we simply focus on caring for Margot, and we had an argument about this, or do we campaign for other people to become bone marrow donors, in the hope that it might help Margot find a donor, but actually the chances are so slim, it was more likely to just be insurance for everybody else. I went to see a tissue typing expert who is now a trustee of Team Margot Foundation, Dr. Daniel McCloskey, who demystified enough of it for me to give us a clue as to where to focus our campaign. You know, if it was likely that we needed to focus on a particular geography, we could blitz that area, I thought. And given her makeup, what he explained was her donor could be literally anywhere in the world. So rather, sort of open in a general way, we launched a bone marrow appeal, and we said to people, you could save a life, and it could be our daughter's. And that became one of these sort of appeals that just caught light, and we gathered a huge audience, and many thousands of people signed up, as a result of which there is roughly a donation every week, we're told by DKMS, on average, that is made to someone needing a stem cell or bone marrow transplant. So there's a potential life-saving donation every week. It really does make a difference, and you can help others. So that is something. Turns out Margot's transplant looked like it was going to work for her, and it didn't in the end. And as we were in the stage of time where, having tried some experimental treatment, we were given advice by the consultants that actually you should spend time with your daughter during her best weeks now, and just care for her and make sure that she's pain-free. So that's what we did. That's the route that we went down in the end, for the sake of her, rather than to make ourselves feel better in some way. So during that time, my wife, who's a much better person than me, she raised this idea that we might be able to donate Margot's organs. Actually, at the time, she thought it was her cornea and her heart valves. It later transpires that you can't, if you've had a blood disorder, donate organs. But nevertheless, we had the conversation. It's a really seminal, important conversation. And I was driving at the time, and she was sitting next to me in the car and suggested this. And I was horrified. And I thought, have you lost your mind? Hasn't she suffered enough? That was my instinct. And it's interesting, because today, if heaven forbid someone close to you or your family member finds themselves in a circumstance where they're on life support and they can donate their organs, what happens at that time is the family is called in, and they have a conversation about whether or not how you can honor the wishes of the soon-to-be deceased. Express decision made, or now with presumed consent, which is the legal term, organs can be donated. And of course, if you've turned up and this is the first time you're hearing this, there's a high probability you'll behave as I did, and you'll say, no, thanks very much. having had the conversation, a day or two later, to her credit, Vicky said, look, just think about it. And a day or two later, I'd come full circle and decided that, of course, if we could, having thought about it, we absolutely should donate Margot's organs. And so that's effectively the story, that Margot's story. Today, I mean, 3 months after she died in January 2015, we're a relatively young charity compared to Orin and ACLT, who have decades of experience. We set up Team Margot Foundation. And in that first year, we ran 60 events, and it was exhausting. And we thought, we can't be a recruiter any longer. We're not doing ourselves any good. It was exhausting. And so we switched, and we became an educator alongside NHS Blood and Transplant. We set up givingtohelpothers.org, which is long-term. Nobody else is really doing this, talking to primary school age children. Because what we really want is ultimately for us not to have this conversation in the universities, but for people of all ages to just, for donation to be the norm rather than the exception to the norm, for it to make a cultural difference. And of course, government isn't spending money there because the return is mañana. It's too far away into the future. And then after years, 8 years of being kicked about and talking to NHS Blood and Transplant as a charity and saying to our middle managers there, what about this? And they'd say, oh no, but that's beyond my remit. That's above my pay grade. You'll have to talk to the execs. So then we speak to the chief exec or the executive team and we say, what about this? And they say, oh no, that's beyond our remit. It's a policy decision. Well, all right, then we decided to get a bit political. So in December last year, Team Margot Foundation, with the backing of our chair, Sarah Olney, MP for Richmond Park, and 3 or 4 other MPs, we set up an all-party parliamentary group called Ethnicity, Transplantation and Transfusion. Bit of a mouthful, but it does what it says on the tin. And this is about advocating for equity of access to treatment. And in March this year, Nick, I'm very pleased that Nick came along to our inaugural stakeholder event, where Sarah Olney, our chair, announced an inquiry into diversity, donation and delivery. We subsequently asked for we had a call for evidence on the 12th of May, and we've had 54 written evidence submissions. And then at the end of June, we had 2 evidence witness sessions, verbal evidence witness sessions, that were run with a panel of MPs, Sarah Olney, Jackie Dole-Price, who is Conservative, Olney is Lib Dem, and Mark Tarmy, who's a Labour MP. Cross-party, a panel of people asking the experts questions. And these were people like Orin, who has a personal family story, but also clinicians and medics and people in the seat where change can come about. On the 1st of November, we shall be launching a report. And I'm going to give you briefly some heads up as to what that report says, but shh, don't tell anyone. It's quite dense report, it's 30-something pages, and with glossary and appendices, it's a 55-page tome. And the big headline is how startling it is that there has been very little data on ethnicity. When you think that matching is required, we don't know enough about patient ethnicity, for instance. And worse still, recommendations were made for data collection back in 2010, and very little, if nothing, has been done as far as stem cell and bone marrow is concerned. Organ has made some better progress. Blood departments have made better progress. There's those 3 types of donation, organs, blood, and stem cells and bone marrow. And so one of the headlines is that there's been a lack of accountability, and we are going to be calling for a Minister for Health Inequalities for transplant and transfusion treatments or services to be appointed. For an independent body, which is looking like it's going to be the Race Health Observatory. We've spoken to the chief executive there, who will be saying a few words on that day, and perhaps for an equality czar, which was a suggestion from a transplant physician to be appointed as well, to hold people's feet to the fire and make sure that they do the do. Enough of the words, it's about actions and doing. And then there's a very deep data, many recommendations, but there is a data issue as well as a public engagement strategy that's required at one and at the other end of the spectrum. I'm thrilled that, having had a look at the report, Margaret and team came back and said, look, we would be interested in doing something over the course of the next 12 months or more around evidence-based research. And you have, this calls for systems change, really. It's culture change is the hardest thing. And systems change is required. And the way you go about doing it is in nursing programs, for instance, with training and so on. So the report, entitled "Where Are Our Nation's Donors?" is currently going through a sign-off process, and we hope once it's ready, we will certainly share it with you. And whatever support you can give, this is then becomes a sort of political thing as to how we get people appointed and whose door we lay it at. The steer I've been given is the public health door, rather than the inequalities door. So I'm going to draw a line there and stop speaking and hand over to Orin. But it's really I hope that gives you a overview and a framework of what we do. Orin does something slightly different. I can't leave without saying that Black History Month is also what we're now calling Orgtober. It's Organ Donation Education Month too. Lots of things happen in October. But lastly, my wife, during an appeal, which was on an Australian breakfast TV channel, she was asked just before we finished the interview, "Vicky, is there anything you want to say to our viewers and listeners?" And she said, if you'd be prepared to accept a donation, whether it's organ, blood, or stem cells, a donation of any kind, for yourself or indeed for a loved one, a child perhaps, then you should be prepared to give also. And we'd like people to think about that. And that is at the root of what Team Margot is all about. Thank you very much for listening. I haven't heard any questions yet, but I'm around afterwards to take them as you wish.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I really appreciate that. Very, very important. And thank you for sharing your story. What I'm going to do is just hand over to Orin, and then we can do some questions at the end, if that's okay. So I'll hand over to you now, Orin.
Thank you. I'm sitting here listening to Yaser, and yeah, it just moves me every time I hear, read Margot's story and Yaser's journey, and how important October is personally to him and his family, how it's important to me and my family, and to what Black History Month represents. First of all, I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm not working in my usual location, and I might have 1 or 2 technical issues, so please bear with me, and I'll hopefully run through this presentation. Thank you very much, Margaret and the team, for the invitation to do this and to give you a chance to understand what the ACLT is all about. I'm going to hope that this presentation works. So I'm going to, hopefully you can see my.
Yes, we can see that.
Have you got the full screen version?
Yes, we do.
You have. Okay, good, because I'm seeing a present version. So the ACLT is the African Carribean Leukaemia Trust. And when someone says to me, what do you do? My automatic default answer is we save lives. We save lives with the help of strangers, and try to get a total stranger to be inspired by what we, or as you heard with Team Margot and other stakeholders, see how they can actually be of help to someone else. So I'm going to click on these slides. And as it says, together we can save more lives today and in the future. And we give hope to gift a life. In the picture, you'll see, hopefully you see myself and my better half, my soulmate, my wife now 7 years, but my partner in life for 30 years, Beverly DeGale. And between us, we have been on a journey that we wouldn't wish on anyone. And you heard from Yaser the journey that he and his wife and his family went through with Margot. Ours is of a similar nature in terms of we just don't, we do this because we don't want anyone to have to repeat what we've gone through. And so we try to make sure that we give hope to patients living with illnesses and disorders like blood cancers, like leukemia and other blood cancers, those who need blood transfusion or exchanges because they've got a blood disorder like sickle cell anemia or thalassemia, and those individuals who need well-matched organs, whether living organ donation or deceased organ donation, because our work is driven by belief that no one should die waiting for a donor to become available. So as a team Margot, there's always a catalyst. And in our case, it's my son, my stepson, Daniel DeGale, whose journey started at the age of 6 in the spring of 1993, when after a lot of misdiagnosis, he was finally diagnosed by a simple blood check. He was diagnosed with a childhood form of leukemia, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and was rushed to Great Ormond Hospital, who said at the time, if one more week had elapsed, it would have been too late because Daniel was showing severe signs of suffering with a blood cancer. In fact, we were told that he was actually suffering with flu-like symptoms. He had stress, and he was given all sorts of medication which wasn't working. And so Great Ormond Street got him and said at the time that by rights, looking at the records of those children who've gone before him, he should be part of the 70-odd% who should be okay after 2 years of chemotherapy. So we got into this new world of a new language, new terminology, new world of cancer. In this specific case, blood cancer, leukemia, chemotherapy, and all sorts of treatments and that was being administered to Daniel. And as you'll see in the pictures there, the one where he's got his blue uniform on, that's actually a still from a picture at the what is now Good Morning Britain show. It used to be GMTV, and we were doing an interview, and Daniel's showing the classic signs of someone who's suffering with cancer. He's bald, he's lost his hair, he's chubby cheeks, he's showing all the symptoms because of the side effects of the treatment. So when you see someone suffering with cancer and they are very sick, nauseous, bloated, loss of hair, it's the side effects of the treatment you're seeing, not the actual manifestation of the cancer. And so Daniel would bounce from Great Ormond Street Hospital back to our local hospital in Croydon to have a 5-day course of treatment, and then go back to Great Ormond Street Hospital. So he was going from one to the other because of the side effects of the treatment. But eventually he got through 2 years, and we were told to go and live a normal life. We did. We went on holiday, and they said monthly blood checks. That's all we'll do. And that was happening, but that only lasted for 9 months. And I'll never forget it. I got the call from the home care team to say the last check we've done in December isn't looking good. We need to do another one because they were concerned that the leukemia was coming back. And it was confirmed in a meeting myself and Beverly had at Great Ormond Street Hospital in the early part of January '96, and we were told Daniel had relapsed. And then a new term that we'd never heard of, but now became part of our life, relapse. What does that mean? They said the cancer is coming back more aggressively. It's been hiding dormant. The chemo did so much, but after 9 months, it was overcome by these cells that were multiplying again and attacking the bone marrow system. Okay, what happens now? They said 2 things. 1, Daniel's got to go back on 2 more years of chemo. And what's the other one? he needs a bone marrow transplant, or as you heard from Yaser, the other term is stem cell transplant. They're interchangeable terms. Okay, so myself and Beverly were thinking, well, yeah, we remember little Anthony Nolan, a little boy in the 1970s who needed a bone marrow transplant, a massive campaign hosted by Esther Ranson, and it was massive. And his mum Shirley did everything to try and find him a donor, but sadly he passed away. But she started the world's first bone marrow register, the Anthony Nolan Trust, the forerunner of all the registries around the world. But that was 24 years ago. So there must be hundreds of thousands, if not millions around the world on registers. And they said, yeah. The problem is they're all white, they're mainly white Northern European descent. What's race got to do with it, we said. They said race has got everything to do with it. If Daniel was white Northern European, he'd have a chance of, at best, maybe 1 in 4, 1 in 5 chance of finding the match. That's not to say every white person finds a donor. Many don't. But in comparison to Daniel being black, they said, well, Daniel's chances, let's start with 1.25 million, because less than 600 black or mixed race people have been on that register in 24 years. And myself and Beverly were like, we looked at each other and like, you've got to be kidding me. And it felt like someone had heard this message before, being offered a challenge to make a difference, and it said, no, we're not going to do it. We're going to put that baton down, that relay baton down. So it's been passed to us, we can't run with this. And so for me and Beverly, we symbolically in our minds picked that baton up and said, we're going to start running in the direction we think it is forward to help our Daniel and someone else. So we started the African Caribbean Leukaemia Trust. So if you're of African or Caribbean descent or mixed race descent, that was our core audience. And so that's where we started. And in that spring of 1996, we started raising awareness in small ways. Did 2 TV documentaries, one on Carlton TV, ITV, called Looking for the Match. They compared Daniel trying to find a match with a white boy of the same age looking for a match. The young white boy found a donor, but Daniel was still looking for the donor. And then we did a pilot for BBC TV called Black Britain, and they highlighted Daniel's story, and they showed myself and Beverly doing an appeal at the Hackney Empire, where in front of an audience coming to watch a theatre play. At the end, we went on stage and Beverly gave an address, Daniel sitting in the audience, and straight away people went next door up to Hackney Town Hall next door, where there was a health mobile, and nearly 70 odd people signed up in the freezing cold to give blood to be tested for Daniel and anyone else like him. And we felt, wow, we can do this. And Anthony Nolan told us at the time they'd never seen numbers like that. So in the June of that year, 2nd of June 1996, we started the African Caribbean Leukaemia Trust, the ACLT, going into the community in all places and going against the myths and the fears and taboos about saving someone like Daniel and what being a bone marrow stem cell donor is all about. Daniel, in the meantime, has started treatment again. The clock's ticking. 2 years come and go. He goes into secondary school, and weeks later, on a Friday, Beverly gets the call, the same call that I got. Literally 9 months again have come and gone, and he's relapsed. And Daniel, that Friday was very traumatic for everyone, because Daniel was coming home to tell us he's the Year 7 football captain, and he was on cloud 9 because they were having their biggest match of the season against their sister schools. So it was like Liverpool versus Everton, Man United versus Man City, that sort of thing. And we had to tell him that your world's going to change again, because you're going to have to lose your hair and get chubby, and all your new friends are going to know about your history, your medical history. And he was angry. We eventually got him to come round, and the next day he went out, captained the team, and they won 3-2. But the Monday, he knew, we knew, the clock started ticking, where his chances have now dropped to 25%, and he was going to need a lifesaver. So we've got a parallel world going on with myself and Beverly. We're doing our day jobs. We're trying to run a charity. We're trying to help other patients, families who have been hearing about us, seeing the campaigns going on, and trying to get more people to register to become bone marrow donors, stem cell donors, to start giving blood, because Daniel from the get-go was getting regular blood transfusions. And I don't think actually at the time we realized how significant ethnicity was for someone like Daniel needing regular blood donations. We were just glad that people were donating blood, but great. But we were still campaigning people of all backgrounds, especially Black people, mixed race people, give blood. And as it says on screen, our underlying ethos is to educate communities across the UK of all ethnicities, but especially those from ethnic minorities, to raise awareness about these forms of donation, how one person can be of value to a totally other person. And we've been recognized for our work. You heard the intro that we picked up lots of awards. Yeah, we have. And they sit on the shelf. You know, that's what they do. They're gathering dust. It's great. And you know, great occasions to go and get, pick up our awards from Princess Anne and the Queen and so on, Pride of Britain. But that's what they are. They're pats on the back, they're compliments. Great. They open doors in terms of, in many ways, of allowing us to get access to raise the awareness. But you can open the door, but it's what you do when you open the door. And so for us, it's a case of kicking down that door and really pushing the boundaries of making people to appreciate and understand just how important it is to make a difference. So we're looking for lifesavers, kindness of a stranger. And I'll say in advance, you might want to turn the volume down on your screens, because the volume on this next few minutes of this video is a bit harsh, but I'm hoping you can hear it. Let's see if this works. I hope it works. That was the moment Daniel met Doreen, his donor. An incredible, it took 5 years. In fact, sorry, let me restart. It took 6 years for Doreen to be found. She wasn't on the register. She listened to an appeal at the US Postal Service, where she works in downtown Detroit, joined the American Registry, and months later was suddenly told, Doreen, you're the one. She's like, well, it can't be. I've just registered. Yes, you match a 12-year-old boy. That's all we're going to say. She spoke to her family. She spoke to her pastor. Everyone said, it's use your faith alongside the technology, the logic, the practicalities. They go together. You can save a life. And she donated. And on Wednesday the 16th of June 1999, 6:45 p.m. Finally, this nurse walked into Daniel's room. He'd been in an isolation room for a week, because when someone receives someone else's stem cells or bone marrow, they have to their own existing bone marrow system is completely zapped with all body radiation to make sure all the bad cells are gone and only the good cells are left. And his nurse walked into the room where Daniel was. He was wearing his Man United shirt. I'm filming, Beverly's in the room. And she walked in with something that looks a bit like this bottle of fruit juice. Because that's what stem cells sort of looks like. Very small amount, 3-4% of what you donate, days or maybe a week or two later, you regenerate it back naturally. And about 45 minutes later, something that looked a bit like this was intravenously transfused into Daniel's bone marrow system, allowing him to go on a journey that is quite traumatic actually for the patient. You're trying to find a donor. You find a donor, and you think you get to the top of the hill, and you have, but another journey starts, because then the new cells have got to merge very well with the existing cells. And at first, they have a real barney of a fight, and that manifests itself with a physical reaction on the patient. So Daniel went through gut reactions, ulcers. He couldn't swallow food, so he was fed through his nose, and you go on a real low before you come back, and the blood counts start to pick up. And Daniel went home at the end of July on his sister's birthday. And oh, by the way, the first person they always check for a stem cell bone marrow donation is a sibling, but siblings are only 1 in 4 matches. That's why Dominique, his younger sister, first person they checked but didn't match, hence why the unrelated search around the world. And the unique thing about, and Daniel and Doreen highlight just the uniqueness of this. Daniel is an African Caribbean boy born in London, whose roots go back to Grenada and Jamaica. Doreen is an African American woman born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, USA. But the key thing about it is their West African roots were matching, and it's not where you're born, it's where your genetics go back to. And so in their case, their West African genetics meant that they migrated originally from more or less the same area, West Africa. And that's what it's about, finding people with the same background to be a match. So with Doreen, she allowed Daniel to go on and pass 12 GCSEs, 3 A-levels, off to university with a view to being at the London Olympics as a sports physiotherapist. And between the two of them, tens of thousands of people coming forward and registering to save lives. Daniel's campaign was huge. But as you'll see on the screen, time ran out for our son. Because despite the fact that so many people throughout his campaign, his massive campaign in the late 90s, and early 2000s, we lost him to multiple organ failure. And that was caused, we can't categorically prove it, but we know for sure in our heart and soul, that's because Daniel waited 6 long years, 2 major relapses, 6 years of chemotherapy, 6+ years, in fact, many more years, since from the age of 6 to when he passed away at the age of 21, he was receiving constant blood transfusions. And as I said earlier, we didn't question it at the time, the quality of the blood, which was good enough for him to survive. But when you get constant blood transfusions, like Daniel was getting later on, and it's not from the same source of people, then you start to build up antibodies. A high profile of antibodies changes means that in Daniel's case, iron overload, which becomes a problem. And so he was caught in a vicious circle where his hemoglobin level was dropping like a stone, and he was needing 3 to 5 units of blood transfusions every week to survive. And myself and Beverly are very grateful that lots of white people give blood, because if you look at the stats, it's mainly white Northern Europeans who give blood, who just happen to have the same blood group, which can go across to another person of a different race. That's okay for one occasion. But when you need it multiple times, like Daniel needed, or like sickle cell patients who are predominantly of African heritage, then you need someone who's not only the same blood group, but it's also the same tissue type. As Yaser said, ethnicity becomes a factor. And there are certain blood subtypes, especially the RO subtype, which you find mostly in Black people. RO subtype is the gold standard for sickle cell patients who need blood exchanges and blood transfusions. That gives them the best quality of life going forward. But for Daniel, he was getting so much blood transfusions, it was causing a major problem. And in the end, his liver and his kidneys packed up, and he passed away from multiple organ failure. As you see on that date, he was only 21. And like Margot, Daniel is a special person whose effect is short but powerful. And like Margot, Daniel is saving lives today. So many people wanted to help Daniel during this campaign and beyond. And now we found record amount of donors, stem cell donors in Daniel's name, years after they registered for us at one of our drives. We're getting notification from the registries that this person donated on this day at this event and went on to be a donor. We get white donors, we get Asian donors. Predominantly, most of the donors coming through us are of African, Caribbean, and mixed heritage, and we've passed the 200 figure of actual donors who've actually registered and gone on to be lifesavers for others. In fact, the drive that was scheduled just before Daniel passed away in Edmonton at Barclays Bank a few years ago, we got notification that the 300 odd people who registered on that day as a celebration of Daniel's life, a white Northern European young man between 18 and 30 went on to be someone's donor. And for us, that's a massive tribute to Daniel and what he represents, and so many other people that we've been working with. Because for us, we don't want to add to this roll call. We don't want, they would say to me to say to yourself, BNU, our membership is closed. Our membership, we only got to here because we ran out of time. Not enough donors came forward. But armed with the information that you have to become a stem cell bone marrow donor, and to become a stem cell donor is just, these days, you can do it by giving blood. As a blood donor, you can. But most people now join by giving a cheek swab. Like what I've got in my hand. And they take the DNA from inside the cheeks, send it to the registry, put it under the lab, see in real time whether you can be a match, which most likely you won't, because being a donor, stem cell donor, is like winning a lottery. But like they say, with the lottery, you've got to be in it to win it. And that is what being a stem cell donor is. Put it on the system and being the ultimate insurance policy. And who knows what might happen? And donation is like giving blood. It's like a long version of giving blood. And so, talking about that, there on the screen, hopefully you can see two people. David Harewood, a very famous actor who registered at the Notting Hill Carnival. You know, we go to places where we have to go. We're at the Notting Hill Carnival, we're in the majority, so let's take it to the people. And we found quite a few donors from Notting Hill Carnival. David was one of them. And I took that picture about 2.5 years later, where he matched an African-American gentleman. And for David, he said he was quite emotional afterwards because it went across the ocean to give someone a chance. And then you're seeing a young lady there who donated through us again, came to one of our drives, and she's actually holding the bag of her stem cells, which would have gone off to someone else. So for us, wearing the ACLT, I'm wearing my ACLT hat today, but I'm also wearing my NBTA hat. We want to inspire, motivate, and provide leadership to inspire and motivate people like yourselves to look inside your heart and soul and realize, actually, I could be the one. I mean, as you can see, the pictures there, we don't even see the face, the eyes of the individuals. It's what's inside here, you know, whether you're a B-boy, whether you wear a hoodie, whether you're religious, you know, it's really a matter of, you know, in this case, free swabs, 2 ways to donate. 1 or more lives could be saved. Give blood. I mean, I give blood. I've done it 55 times. And I'm so empowered because I get a text about 2 weeks later and it tells me, Orin, your blood went, my O positive blood, which is one of the common ones, went to this hospital, that hospital. And I think to myself, wow, who could it be saving? How many adults? How many babies? You know, it's amazing to think what can be done, and it's a no-brainer. But I try to make sure that we get the message across to our community, the Black community, especially in this month of World Month, Black History Month. Start your journey, because you could be of value to many people, but especially to people who look like you, who need well-matched blood, because you have something in your blood which is making it different but special to help those other people. Carry an organ donor card. Don't opt out of the organ donor system, because Black people wait 7 times longer than their white counterparts for kidney transplant, because kidneys and livers, especially those 2 organs, yes, white people can donate to a South Asian and to a Black person. That's fine. But if the physicians had a choice between a Black donor and a white donor for a Black patient, and blood groups are similar, tissue type is going to push them onto the Black person, because the quality of life going forward for that Black patient or the South Asian patient or whatever racial background, it's like for like when it comes to matching on organ donation. But we don't have enough Black or South Asian donors, either living or deceased. It is bad, really bad. If you look at the stats on the year-end basis, you can probably count Black deceased donors about less than 24, 25 in 1 year, and about the same amount on living donors. It's not good. And so we're trying to make sure that we keep on top of this and realize how important your ethnicity is to this. So in sort of closing, I just really want to highlight, if I can get this slide up, yeah. From a stem cell point of view, if you haven't started your journey yet, you might want to take the QR code with your phones right now. That will take you to a page on our website where you can actually start your journey through the registry, through 1 or 2 portals actually. If you're anything between 17 and say 55, you can join through the German portal, which is DKMS. They have a profile in this country. But if you're a youngster and you're 16 to 30, you can join via anti-Nolan. And just start your clicking there, because as it says there, 37% chance for Black and ethnic minority to find a donor. 72% for a white person. And these are the best matches. It gets worse when you actually swivel it down to not getting a 10 out of 10 match. The gap is still there. We need to close that gap. And in Black History Month right now is our chance, with your help and your academia help, to help that APPG report that Team Margot is pushing and running, that we're part of, to make sure that those who need to hear it, those who are the stakeholders, the commissioners, the public, the politicians, understand there is still a massive divide that needs to be shortened, to make sure that we don't have any more Margos, that we don't have any more Daniels out there, and to make sure that what they, their short lives is, and the message that we work on is not in vain, because by any means necessary, we need to be doing everything we can to give someone the gift of life. I'm going to finish on that note, but really just want to thank you for listening to Yaser and myself. It's about collaboration work as well as individual work. And really just want to thank you for taking time to stop, listen, feel, learn, inspire, action. On that note, I'm gonna thank you. On that note, I'm gonna come out. I'm gonna try and unshare my slides. If I cannot unshare, I'll drop out of the call and come straight back.
All right. Thank you, Orin. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Orin and Yaser. I mean, gosh, I don't even know what to say now. It's just really to say thank you. I think, just listening to your stories has been absolutely transformational. It's really touched me, and I'm sure it's touched a lot of everyone on the call this morning. And it's something we don't think about. And I think it's those words you said, Yaser, where you said, you know, if you're willing to accept a donation from somebody, why aren't you donating? And that just really made me stop and think about that, because, you know I wouldn't be saying no to a donation, but I personally haven't given one yet. So that's given me something to take away and reflect upon. And, I think it's just really brought the message home, and listening to those statistics around the differences, particularly for people of colour, just really is very sobering thought, and something that really we need to, make some action, do something about. So we are really, really pleased to be partnering with yourself and Orin and doing some research to try and see what we can do to get the message out, educate and do something. So have our part in it as well, because this is something that's close to all of our hearts and something that's important for all of us. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to some questions, because I'm sure there are some questions from the floor. I can see that Kieran's hand was up. Is that right, Kieran? Your hand was up.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't so much a question. Thank you, Margaret. It was more of kind of a reiteration of the message. My wife worked for Anthony Nolan for over a decade, and so if you're not moved, which I think all of us are, by the stories and by the work, the amazing work that Yaser and Orin are doing, it's just to reiterate the simple message that Orin had there towards the end of his talk, which is to be part of that stem cell register. It is a simple cheek swab. It's that easy. And I think people sometimes are put off by this idea of bone marrow donation and stem cell, and they think, oh, what does it involve? It is a very simple process to be part of that register. And so it's so easy, and there's no reason why any of us can't be involved in saving a life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kieran. Thank you. Absolutely agree. And thank you, Orin, for showing us how simple it is to get registered, because I didn't realize it was that simple. I thought, oh my gosh, do I have to do some sort of procedure? So thank you for that. There is a question in the chat from, first of all, there's a lot of thank you and appreciation in the chat to both yourself, Orin, and Yaser. So thank you for that. But there is a question from Louise, which I think is a very important question, and something that we were just thinking about doing something, which is what can we do at our campuses to raise awareness for our university community and also our local communities. And she's saying, can we organise for staff and students who want to get involved? Louise, did you want to come in?
Yes, if I can. Just to add to just how moving those stories were, and I'm completely fired up now to do whatever I can. I am an organ donor, but it was a while back I couldn't give blood for a medical reason, but I'm going to get back on that and definitely do the Anthony Nolan thing. So those lives were definitely not in vain. There are many people, I'm sure, from this session that will now want to do something. But it just struck me that we have a group of young people in the main here who are at the start of their trying to do something good and make a difference in the world. If we can play our part to try and get from the thousands of students we have on campus to go and tell their friends who tell their friends. Is there anything we could do in terms of people giving swabs, or I'm sure we can get blood vans here and things like that, but just really something to think about afterwards, but very much here to support you in however we can help you to raise awareness.
No, thank you for that. We can definitely help create a registration drive. We do a lot of this. We're doing it right now. Last week, Freshers Fair Week, we were at various places, and we go to a lot of universities and colleges as well as schools, and actually run stem cell drives where people can actually come and actually listen to a presentation, or just if not, just come and talk to us and give a cheek swab. And we send it off to the registry, either Anthony Nolan or DKMS, and get you started. So we can definitely work with you to make that happen. My team, headed by National Development Manager Sabrina, she works very closely in developing the opportunity to make that a realistic opportunity happen. So we'll definitely be up for working with you on that.
Brilliant. I'll get talking to someone and we'll make it happen. Thank you.
I would just jump in there and say it's really helpful actually to have people campaign, and Orin being on the ground really with this can help affect it. But almost before you tell somebody else to do it, you almost have to do it yourself. And there is something to that sort of conviction. I think there are three types of donation, as we've talked about, and they all have different levels of commitment. And I often see registering as a stem cell donor as being like the gateway to this philosophy of donation. And I speak as someone who wasn't on the organ donor register until my wife Vicky said that was the least attractive thing about me, and so that changed when we were dating. And because there are different levels of commitment, and with a stem cell donor registration, you just swab your cheek, as Orin said, and go on standby. You don't actually have to donate anything other than a bit of ink onto a form to fill in, and also a cheek swab. There's a very light touch, which is a very different commitment level from giving blood regularly, ideally, and often. 3 times a year. So there are different levels of engagement, and as I say, I think stem cell donation, if you haven't looked at donation before, is probably a good gateway.
Thank you. Gulen.
Hi, Yaser and Orin. Thank you very much for sharing your experience. I'm sorry my camera is not working, but I used to work as a clinical nurse specialist in hemoglobinopathies. That means mostly sickle cell and thalassemia patients. And I used to do a lot of blood exchange, especially for sickle cell patients, once a month. And each person needed at least 8 to 10 units of blood. When Yaser, you asked the nurse if you have got enough blood, and as a parent and relative, I mean, as a healthcare professionals, we used to ask that question exactly, have you got enough blood to do this exchange? And waiting very nervously, most of the time the answer was no in our local hospital, and we used to, call Collindale Blood Center and try to get all those bloods. And it was always a little bit struggle to find enough blood, especially for our sickle cell patients, mostly Afro-Caribbean origins. And I just wanted to emphasize, how important to raise awareness. And I'm really happy Louis said we will hopefully raise this or do something with our students and our university community. But I also wanted to emphasize it. Maybe we need to look at the curriculum, for example, pre-reg and post-reg nursing curriculum, to see how it is covering blood-related issues, as well as stem cell collections, etc. I mean, when you look at it, it's not as much as I would like to see. I think we need to raise that awareness as well, and hopefully me and Margaret and we will look at this, don't we, Margaret, and see how we are going to do. Thank you.
That's so prescient. But I mean, if I can just jump in here. When my youngest was born, all the dramas happened. It was a C-section, and I'm holding him, and I'm looking around. I counted in theatre 8 people, 2 doctors, and a bunch of other people in theatre. And I asked the question, quick show of hands, pop quiz, who here is on the bone marrow register? And they all looked at me as if I had 2 heads. And Vicky, hearing the silence, as she's being sewn up, looking at the ceiling, said, it's also known as the stem cell register. And one of the doctors said, I think I've heard of that. But you can't assume that anyone knows. Nobody really is that clued into this. And partly that's because NHS Blood and Transplant has been so focused on blood and on organs, and stem cells has been lost over the years, somewhere in the middle. But it's a really good key point, the nursing programs and so on. Absolutely, it's a great training ground. Sorry to jump in.
No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you. Yes, I'm going to thank you, Gulen. Absolutely right. We need to focus on that. Nick?
Margaret, thank you. Well, I'm sure Margaret or someone else will be offering you a formal thanks at the end of this session, but can I just say, really, that was so moving and inspiring, those talks. Orin, Yaser, thank you enormously for sharing those stories. We very happy, as you can tell, right across this virtual room, we're very happy to offer you support in any way we can. So let's keep that dialogue open. There may be other ways in which we can support you. Just a couple of things occur to me, and I wonder if I can land these thoughts with you, and you might want to comment if you can. It's not just this university, but obviously we can, if it's helpful, try to find a way into university sector bodies more generally. If there's anything we can do in that service, then please think of us. We're very happy to support you. I thought there was an issue, and I may be wrong, I thought there was an issue here as well about family consent, about levels of consent that people are offering to. So I'm just wondering if there's, obviously we could participate in a registration drive, which would be great, and but is there more we need to do to educate people in the community? And then the final question is just, maybe this is more for Yaser though, which is I just wondered if you might tell us a little bit more about what you hope the APBG will deliver with this work. So just a few little thoughts and questions there.
Absolutely. So to take your first point, yes, one of the bugbears we have with the organ donor law, which came in 3 years ago in May, is that consent. You can make an express decision whether to give your organs after you die or not to give. But come what may, the practice is for the family to be invited in, and actually they can overrule your decision, which is just horrendous. There is no consent because your consent doesn't count at that point. It's almost like this is part of my estate and my will. And what, you're going to override? Are you going to overrule my will? How can that be right? Is one of the key points that we're trying to zero in on and pick on. What we hope to gain from the APPG is, I mean, this is exceedingly helpful to have a platform like this talking to all of you. The notion of having academic study and evidence-based research, not just talking to people inside the circle, but to the wider audience out there to understand what the objections are to being donors, and then having that accredited to yourselves and perhaps to other universities, as you've alluded to, is hugely important. One of our steering group, Gert Randhauer, who is a professor at Bedford, he talks very much about systems change and the need for research, not just the transplant and transfusion, but the education for staff and workforce training. So when you talk about with nurses, but then so it's a multifaceted thing. Education is absolutely key. We've been aiming specifically at primary schools, but really it matters now throughout the whole education process. And again, in 2021, the law changed so that the teachings around donation are taught now in secondary schools. But well, they're supposed to be. There's some confusion there, which we're trying to eke out, because it's on the curriculum, but whether it's mandated to be taught and it's obligatory to be taught isn't the case. And there's a survey that's been done recently by one of our circle which shows that 86% of the time it's not being taught. So there are these, it's a war of attrition. It's about awareness. It's about what as I said at the beginning, what you choose to do yourself, because that lands better to whomever you talk about afterwards. If they look at you and they go, well, you've done it, and maybe I should. And to the age group that I'm talking to, I'm sorry, Nick, it's not so much you, but if you're under 55, you can join the bone marrow register. There is an upper age criteria there, but actually they really like youthful donors for stem cells and bone marrow. It's mainly because there's less complications, and the preferences for men to be donors because they're bigger, they don't have complications, they don't get they don't get pregnant in the same way as women, and can't donate during that time, and there's more liters per, more stem cells per liter. So no, the youth is an advantage when you're choosing and selecting a donor, although the matching is still paramount. Orin, you've got your hand up, and I'm sure I've missed something.
No, well, actually, I was just going to tag on top of that, and it's right what you say, Yaser. But the problem is, and the reason why this whole debate, me, you, and others have been having with the stakeholders of the registry, stem cell, blood and organs, specifically stem cell, is that, as in our case, when there isn't a donor around, you go for whoever's left. And we're very grateful that Doreen was African American, because if Doreen was British, she would have been too old to be found, because the younger, as you say, the anti-Nolan tend to target younger donors, but that's at the behest of having a more diverse pool, even if they're older, because if there's no one there, you will take anyone to be a donor. And in our case, Doreen was in her mid-40s when she registered. Luckily, the American registry had a higher age limit. So the whole thing about diversity is making sure that the net captures everyone, especially when your chances of finding a matching donor are reduced. Primarily, and this is something that myself and Yaser didn't really hit on hard enough, but I'll say it now. The two hardest groups to find stem cell bone marrow donors for are mixed heritage, mixed race people, because of the obvious, the different mixes that you can get, and those from an African descent. And the reason why Black people have it very difficult is that Black people come from the most diverse and widest diversity of gene pools in the world. So we come from billions of people on a continent, and our West African bone marrow types are different to East African bone marrow types, are different to Central to Southern. And so we're Black and brown in color, and Black is not really the right term, and different shades of Black and brown. But our cultures, our languages highlight the fact we're so different, and then our tissue types are different. It's the same with white people. When people say white, Northern Europeans, you got to break it down and say, well, hold on a second. Nordic people, their bone marrow types are different to Slavic people, are different to Mediterranean people, and so on, and Anglo-Saxons, but they have more common bone marrow types in comparison to those who are mixed heritage and those from African descent. So you need to make sure that the net is cast wide enough to capture people who are up to the age of 55 and to be a donor, and to get people to make a difference. And the last thing I just want to say is that the other problem that you need to, that why you don't have consent, especially on organ donation from certain communities, especially the Black community and the Muslim community, is to do with trust or mistrust. And from a Black perspective, there's a high level of mistrust, which played out during COVID to do with the vaccine. You saw the high numbers of Black people who were reticent against taking the vaccine. That's come from a historical legacy of things that have been done to Black people in the name of research, clinical research, colonialism, slavery. There's been lots of things. You find it on the internet. There's so much stuff there. And that has a knock-on effect in terms of people saying, I'm not going to give blood. I'm not going to carry an organ donor card. I'm not going to become a bone marrow donor. And the only reason why they have come through is because of organizations like ACLT and Team Margot and others who they trust in to be part of the system. So it's not the message, it's the messenger and how they articulate that to the audience that they want. And it's the trust. That's why we exist.
Yeah,
Orin, may I just
absolutely
jump in
correct.
lastly? I'm conscious of time. Nick, I didn't really answer your question properly, but with the APPG, we're immersed in Parliament and parliamentary machinations, and fundamentally we want to influence policy and, if necessary, change the law. That often is dictated by public interest and by research momentum from universities and institutions such as yourselves. And so all of this helps. Petitions, all of that stuff does help, but the public engagement part is something that we really do need to rely on, because it's about changing and influencing within Parliament to get stuff done. Ultimately, these MPs, they're legislators. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Yaser and Orin. On behalf of the university, I want to say thank you very much for your time today and coming to talk to us. I think all of us will walk away and take some time to reflect, because this has really been something that's really been insightful and something that's close to home for all of us. So I think we will all take away this message. And hashtag time to donate over the month. So I am encouraging all our colleagues across the university to go out and consider hashtag time to donate. Go and do your bit. It's not as hard as we thought it is. It is a swab, or if you want to commit more, you can do the blood donations, but they are choices. And we've heard that today. So I am encouraging everybody to go out and do your bit. So thank you so much to everybody. Thank you very much, Nick, as well, for coming in and helping us. So have a good day, everyone, and wishing you all a good week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And then there were 5. Thank you very much.
No, it's my, how do I?